Something like that, yeah. My name is Chris Burnham. I run the Tulsa Whovians Society, which meets twice a month at generally the Hardesty Library, sometimes the Martin East Library. We want to get back down here to the Tulsa Central Library since they finished their renovations, which just seem to be taking forever, because that was our original home. But that group's been in existence since 1999. It was founded by a man named Bruce Rich. DJ Novichild, you'll see him, or at least his work later on tonight. And we came up with these panel ideas a couple of years ago. Well, Ogre did, because Ogre, like myself, love to get into cons for free. So we're willing to do whatever's necessary, short of certain vile sexual acts. We're willing to do whatever's necessary. Okay, maybe some vile sexual acts, but only with certain people. Who are willing to do what we can in order to make this happen. So we came up with these panels, Doctor Who 101, which was previous to this, 330, and the Companion Chronicles, which is out here. And this is the third and final of the panels that we have to cover the show today. And this is probably the one where we tend to get the most irreverent, because as we said, if we've been to the other panels that we've been to, we were hosting, we said that we love Doctor Who, and we truly do, but there are certain aspects of Doctor Who that at times are difficult to handle visually, especially for a modern audience. For a show that dates back to 1963 from England, they're on a very small budget. It's kind of embarrassing. And so when we're going to say things here that make it sound like we're making fun of the show, and yeah, we kind of are, but we do it in a loving way. It's like Ogre says, it's like a roast, because we appreciate what we've got now. So this is called Daleks, Cybermen, and Some Parts Online, and is a coverage of many of the various aliens that we've seen in Doctor Who. This is a nice little collage I found online of mostly 10th Doctor aliens, all pushers together here. Some of them are sweet, like the adipose over there. Some of them are kind of frightening. Most of them are kind of frightening. Some of them are potato heads.
Cassandra is the scariest monster around.
Yeah, some nice little cameo there by the Beard Party Joggers.
I'm going to say one thing before we go any further. Normally, before this panel at the alien convention, normally we censor ourselves to call some things, well, fuck that. We get to do it our way.
It's age law here, so we can say what we want to say. And believe me, there's a lot of stuff that we've wanted to say for many years about some of this stuff, because we know many fans are younger people. We just keep it inside ourselves. So I thought it was appropriate to start off with the Cybermen, because of all the returning major Doctor Who characters, villains, monsters that have come through the show. The Cybermen have probably changed more in the time that they've been on the show. They came around in 1966, and we're now almost 50 years later from them, and there's almost nothing left of their original appearance. If you look at this, starting on the left and then circling all the way around to the right, you see the transformation that it makes from 66, 67, 60, both of those are 68. The one up there is 74, those are 80s Daleks, and then 2006. I'm sorry, you're right, it's 80s Cybermen. And then 2006 at the bottom.
Rumor has it that the original Cybermen used up all of Britain's supply of aluminum.
Or tinfoil, you know. So the pattern changes here. This is a still from the very first appearance of the Cybermen. This is the 10th planet.
He's not wearing a ski mask, that's his actual...
Yeah, they went to great efforts here. Wool socks on the face, a giant flashlight on the head, piping and tubing. I don't know how the Cybermen actually stand upright. And what's really amusing, if you watch the story, there's 3 of the 4 episodes do exist, and it's available on DVD. If you watch the story, there's a point towards the beginning of the show where Cybermen, they attack some of they're on a military base in the Antarctic, and they attack the members of the Antarctic, and they steal their clothing, especially their parkas, so they can disguise themselves so nobody could possibly know who they are, and sneak into the base. Dumbest military ever. I don't see how that's really going to work here, but somehow they pulled it off because it's Doctor Who. This is from 2 of the Cybermen. I include this shot really for just one reason, and that is wiffle balls. They used wiffle balls as intense cybernetic material.
But they could do that tremendous flipper action from the female.
Yeah, the Cybermen are giving a golden salute. Yeah, they've only got those fingers because that's advancement. Taking away fingers is making you a better thing.
When the Wizard of Oz's Tin Woodsman has better special effects.
It's a condom dolly, or Cyberman.
Okay, I'm sorry, but the Cyberman looks like a sex toy and has a reservoir tip. You know that we have a problem in costume.
This was the cyber controller.
With vibrating action.
This was the Cyberman that controlled all the other ones. I think you can see why. Just like with humans, Cybermen do go into that whole penis measuring aspect, and this was a real big head. So, yeah. These are cyber mats.
Cyber squirm.
Wear a condom.
Cyber roaches, silverfish. Yeah, little tiny things. They put like little radio-controlled cars underneath this to drive them around, and they look just about as convincing as you could expect, again, in the original stories that they existed. And these are actually the upper models, these are the earlier models, and then like the 70s, they remodeled them, so they just like long metal worms, and they're even less intimidating than they were here. This is another 60s, this is the Wheel of Space. Now, even Cybermen can cry, because they have tear ducts.
The main things you can do with vacuum hoses and wiffle balls.
More wiffle balls. Wiffle balls cannot go away.
And silver velour suits.
Now we're up to the invasion, which is 1968. I believe the wiffle ball, there's something still there. It's a little blurry. We'll look at the actual thing here. No, you have no, the wiffle balls are gone. The wiffle balls are gone. Now you have bigger heads and handles to really grab onto for certain actions, which we won't get into, but the word cyber sex comes to mind. And there is, now they're carrying firearms. This is in the color era. This is the Cybermen were off the screen for 5 years, from 1969 to 1974. You didn't see Cybermen except the one time as a fuzzy image in a Third Doctor story. But in Tom Baker's first season, they come back, and now we know who's in charge because one of them has a black afro.
But the thing is, you got all the places to put your weaponry. You know, back of the arm, hand. No, we're going to stick your machine gun on your head.
Forehead. So you can look your opponent in the eye as you're shooting at them, but
over their head.
Yeah, it just made no sense. These are 1980s Daleks. There is so much tinfoil there. It is, oh my God. Irwin Allen used to make entire costumes like this in the 1960s for the Time Tunnel and Lost in Space. And now Doctor Who has caught up with him 20 years later.
But the Cybermen are really great in fashion. You know they're all wearing
Doc Martin boots. Every single one of them. You can still tell who the leader is because you have black handles on the front one. And this is David Banks. He plays the cyber leader in most of the 1980s stories, and he'll actually play the Doctor in a staged version of Doctor Who story called The Ultimate Adventure. John Pertwee played it on stage, Tom Baker played it on stage, but for a very brief time between those two, David Banks got about a 1 week or maybe 2 week run as the Doctor.
Wait. We missed the Doctor in our last...
Well, it's stage stuff, it's not screen stuff, so it doesn't count the same. There's a whole bunch of other audio ones you have to count as well. It's not canon.
Wow.
Wow.
This is the Cybermen you want to keep away from your puppet.
This is from a story called Attack of the Cybermen. Should have been called Attack of the Golden Corral. This is the same actor. It's actually the same actor as this. Now, 20 years later, and 200 pounds more.
He's in his silver years.
And he has no handles. I think the handles went in here somewhere. I get installed and he ate his own head. I don't know what was going on there. These are, of course, the Cybermen that most of the modern fans were first familiar with. And I really hated this redesign. I like the fact that the Cybermen are presented as a unified thing like the Borg. You know, they move and march the same, but they don't.
Don't go gadget stuff.
That really bugged me. The fact that they're created by somebody human rather than being erased unto themselves kind of bugged me here. And so yeah, for them to wear the C in there, they look like bad superhero something or others here. But you know, it's Cybermen, so it's there.
So they got this the forehead guns and actually gave them good weapons.
And now we get the more modern ones from Nightmare Silver.
Okay, here's the leader.
Wait, are we sure? Because I'm pretty sure that's the leader.
Damn it, no.
None of them are wearing black, so we don't know who the leader is here. But
Figured out it wasn't tactically sound.
you might not identify who's in charge of your group because that might draw their attention. Instead,
Hi, I'm in charge. You and me.
I might be the first one who wants to die. So yeah, those are modern ones. But I think I really like this redesign. I thought it was very nice to sleek them down. They didn't look so bulky. And they still look very nice and threatening. And they do have handles, so it's very useful. For
And they're not made out of tinfoil anymore.
And no, they're not made out of tinfoil anymore.
They're a phone.
And then there are the redesigned Cybermats, which are just out and out scary because they have teeth.
Okay, who hired a goblin star to play the Cyberman?
I did.
You're the one.
Sorry, I'm getting my list up here because I knew we had a lot of cyber stuff. Okay, so yeah, lots of change over 50 years or almost 50 years worth of time for cyber things, but there's lots of other enemies and races, some of them well known, some of them not so well known, that have appeared, some of them in classic era and redesigned for modern era. For instance, I forgot this one, sorry. This is what the cyber control looks like now.
You can tell he's in charge because, well, he's got a brain.
Yeah. And if he has a brain, then, well, you got Cybermen that control, these are cyber shades, these are like steampunk Cybermen, sort of, or steampunk Cybermats. And then you've got big, giganto, techno, steampunk Cyber King.
Okay, they say the Daleks have no imagination. The Daleks can't make build something that doesn't look like one of them in a bigger scale.
It's Pacific Rim for Doctor Who, I guess. I know, I wanted to do. Okay, so yeah, as I was saying, there's some races that appeared on the show back in the classic era, maybe one time, and then they were kind of forgotten or left alone, and then they were brought back in the current era, and they look a lot cooler. Again, this picture's a little difficult to see, which I think a better one, but we don't really have much for this because almost all of this story is gone, except for a few clips. This is the Macra, from a story called The Macra Terror. It's a second Doctor story. It's a really cool story if you ever get to hear it, or watch a reconstruction of it, or read the novelization, but we can't watch it except for small 1 or 2 minute clips that are scattered around because there's no single episode that survives. But they're an insect crab-like race that do mind control on a planet that's in England they have these things called holiday camps, which are basically places you go to get away, like Disneyland, just not quite as marketed and merchandised. And so the planet is like a holiday camp that the Macra have taken over and are brainwashing everybody there for some reason. Oh, they're mining something to get them gas that they feed off of, I think is what's going on.
We have to remember, these wonderful aliens, when played in the series, were played by the back of the head. They could afford to make full costume, so they would put it on the back of the truck and back it up into the scene, do everything, and everything back out.
It was, yeah,
High tech, but
high tech. So now you've got CGI, and you can make crabs that look really, really impressive, but they cost so much that you can't have them on screen too much. So I'm not sure if it's working the same amount here. But this is modern. This is from Gridlock, which is a 10-buck story. And this is what most modern fans think of when they think of macra. If they think of macra, they think of these.
If these crabs show up, it's a little late to go see your doctor.
Yeah, you don't want them around. This is a Yeti. Most people, I'm sure, are familiar with the tale of the abominable snowman. Dr. Who took that and said, what if it was an alien race? And what if it looked like a giant loofah? And what if we could use it to, like, scrub your butt? No. They're really, they're furry.
This is a hand loofah, see?
They're furry, and they're cuddly, and they just want to be loved. And this is how they looked first in the Abominable Snowman. And they got a little change when they came back to the Web of Fear, which was just rediscovered. 5 of the 6 episodes were rediscovered last year, and they've been released on DVD. So you can see this version. The other one, only 1 episode of it exists. You can see them in it, but only 1 episode of it's around.
The main difference is that now they have eyes.
Now they have eyes.
You see it when you run away.
But they're still, despite the fact that they look like big giant teddy bears, they actually were pretty damn frightening, and they're controlled by the balls from Phantasm.
So the guy that controlled by the ball.
No. See, you can't do those jokes normally. That's good. This is a control sphere. It fits into the chest of the Yeti, and it was a way that the Great Intelligence would control the Yeti. Because
The Great Intelligence?
the Great Intelligence loves snowmen so much that, we also made snowmen that are pretty abominable. They're abominable snowmen.
Calvin and Hobbes were on it.
Yeah, okay. He also controls the Whispermen. Now, I think it's funny that if you took the Whispermen and you took the Silence and put them together, you'd have a full face. Yeah, just something to think about there. And they look like the silent gentleman from Buffy, kind of. This is the Great Intelligence, or Judy Grant, who was not happy just playing 2 unofficial doctors to actually get on the show for real. So he comes around and plays the Great Intelligence in 2 of the Matt Smith episodes.
Except when the Great Intelligence is actually being voiced by one of the lords of evil themselves, straight from Mordor.
Or from the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Yeah, Ian McKellen. This is an Ice Warrior. The Ice Warriors were fairly big deals in the 2nd and 3rd Doctor era. They are natives of the planet Mars. They are green. We know that because in the 3rd Doctor story we can actually see them in color, but in the 2nd Doctor stories they appeared in black and white. There are 2 models. There's this version, which is the Ice Warrior itself, which has the smaller head. They all have these claw things here.
Okay, guys, these are the first Lego people.
Yeah, Lego villains.
It's French tickler with Lego hands.
And then there's the Ice Lords, which have the medieval-style helmets, and they're usually smaller than the Ice Warriors, and therefore they're in command. Because, they have insecurity issues, but they're kind of Napoleonic.
Very big brain, maybe a little fighting.
And again, no fingers apparently is an advanced civilization. This is a modern one that you saw in Cold War, watched here. We finally, and I didn't put a picture up here, we finally actually see what the Ice Warrior looks like inside that, because this is all armor. And it comes off, and they're a reptilian-based creature. You get a nice shot of their face in one of them. But this is all armor plating, and it's actually embarrassing to be taken out. But notice in the redesign, hands.
And it still looks like a sex toy.
There's always going to be that aspect, at least for Jill.
How many more alligators did they have to skin to make that outfit?
These are autons.
The original real doll.
Most of you, if you started Doctor Who with the revival of the series, the Autons were the first alien race that you saw, but they didn't look like this. However, if you ask fans and people who grew up, especially in England in 1970, who were children when this story is the first third of the story, Spearhead from Space, if you ask them about what they remember, they will tell you, I remember the Autons crashing through the windows and and marching down the sidewalks, because that imagery was so petrifying to small children for whatever reason. They had these window shop dummies, and they did shots of them. You didn't actually see them break the window, you just heard it, and you saw reactions of people on the street, and then you saw the enfants making their way down the street.
Leading an entire generation to have a pathological fear of mannequins.
Lots of mannequins and other plastic things, inflatable chairs, and they used to give away these flowers that were plastic with soap detergent. They grew up afraid of those as well. And giant, like, carnival clowns with the big plastic heads, they were terrified of those as well. These are the more modern icons which you saw. They're kind of uniform here, and again, they move in a very much. And I really like the fact that in this episode, they put in this like noise of plastic bending, and it makes it so creepy because you can hear them move. There was no movement sound in the originals, but they go to the effort of putting in what plastic sounds like when you bend it and rub it against something. This is a Silurian. This is what they look like originally. The Silurians are a race native to Earth. They lived underground. They lived in peace and harmony, away from human beings for a long time until the military fucked that up. And then this glowing thing at the top in the middle here is a third eye. And initially in this story, the use of that third eye was kind of telekinetic. They could use it to force people, overwhelm them physically without having to physically interact with them. I mean, they just kind of glower and shake their head, and this thing would light up and you hear a weird sound. So they appeared in a story called The Silurians, actually called Doctor Who and The Silurians, but it's called The Silurians because his name is not Doctor Who, so I hate to use that in there. These are their cousins, the Sea Devils.
Yeah, Colonel. That can kick ass. Not like Michael Bay.
And that's John Pervius from a story called The Sea Devils. And it's so nice that they tell you who's going to be in the show, because children sometimes don't follow along.
Okay, my problem with this one is, we're going with their outfit. Do you have their other outfit?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, we go from wearing a fishing net.
I don't think it's the next slide though, I think it's 2 down. Yeah, now we go back to the Silurians. Okay, now, just as a quick reminder, that's what they look like originally.
This is what the Sea Devils look like originally.
And now we got these Silurians. Now these look a little cooler, right? Because they're a little more sculpted, a little more form-fitting. But the problem is, they more prominently display the eye, but the eye doesn't do the same thing. Now the eye lights up like a Dalek light. It just tells you who's talking.
I'm just happy their mouth doesn't look like they got it off a blow-up doll anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't have the round mouth thing going on. And speaking of not having things, the Sea Devils have lost their ears.
There we go. We go from Ninja Turtle to Samurai Turtle.
Samurai, yeah. The deadliest swordfish in the world. These are shots from a story called Warriors of the Deep, which is a 5th Doctor story, the opening of the 21st season. The other shots, the original Silurians were season 7, and the Sea Devils were season 9. So there's quite a bit of time frame in between. And then there's these are modern Silurians. These are modern Silurians. And those are become 2 varieties. There's these, which are prominently green and scaly, but have human eyes, like Madagascar. And then there are those which have they're like sleazeback. They're wearing masks. Yeah, true. So they got the warrior coverage up there. But they definitely have made the Silurians something that continue on. If you're going to make a semi-intriguing companion out of them, then the Silurians carry on. But notice also, no more eye in the middle. It's gone.
If you're going to have an alien race become a recurring character, don't make them look ridiculous.
Don't make them look like a potato. Wait a minute.
Look at the potatoes.
Hey, I am now personally offended. I am sorry. This is racist. I am an ogre.
These are ogre. These are ogre.
Close. Too close.
They are a brutish race from the planet. They are servants of the Daleks. They are not particularly intelligent. They're henchmen. They don't smell very good. And they can be... I'm sorry, I'm sorry, my thought. No, they are incredibly stupid. And then they're employed by the Daleks to go and do stupid things. And they're all played... They're all played by former pro wrestlers and football players because they needed the size on them. It's just a half-mast.
And since they're not going to have any real lines.
Yeah, they're really not. They have the acting potential of most professional wrestlers and football players as well.
And this coming from
someone who actually works in the professional wrestling industry. That's true. Okay, so now we have a category which is a little diverse because across the time, especially in the classic series, we encountered many other members of the Doctor's race. This is something that you don't really get in the new series because he's the only one, at least he was for a long time. But in the classic series, Gallifrey is still there, and the Doctor is just one of many renegades that get fed up with life on Gallifrey and go off and do their own thing.
As much as it tries to avoid the rest of it.
But the Doctor seems to be like one of the few good ones. Everybody else who leaves the planet is not so good. So to make sure we understand exactly what we're talking about here, we put up some qualities here. They have all the powers of the Doctor. They can regenerate. They have the telepathic stuff. It's all there. But they have none of the morality. They usually have the same intelligence. Actually, in most instances, they're smarter than the Doctor. At least in a book sense. Maybe not so much in an actual application sense. Some of them have really cool titles, like Doctor. In fact, most of them that we know have weird titles because their names just don't seem to matter anymore. They want to divest themselves of their connection to Gallifrey. But they're all the ones who leave Gallifrey are technically renegades, but we want to just focus on the ones that are bad. So we're going to start off with this one, who is the Doctor's mentor.
Barusa. I know that's not no funky title, that is his actual name.
That is his actual name, Barusa. 4 times we see Barusa across the course of the classic series. The top 2 are from 4th Doctor stories, The Deadly Assassin, The Invasion of Time. This is from the 5th Doctor story, The Arc of Infinity, and this is from the 5 Doctors which we screened in the other room earlier today. This one's good, this one's good, this one's good, and then this one just sucks it all up. Sometimes you just get a bad regeneration, and it just trains, you go to shit. Yeah. But
he sure wasn't a hat.
He is Lord President of Gallifrey. As of this incarnation, we see him as Lord President of Gallifrey, and definitely in that incarnation as well. He just wants more. He's one of those great examples of power corrupting absolutely.
Well, we have to remember one thing, though, about Barusa. The reason he got the job is the job was given to someone else. The Doctor.
The job's supposed to go to the Doctor if he doesn't want to.
And the Doctor says, guys, you wait here, you take everything, I'll be right back.
Yeah.
And then he runs away.
Like he always does. He's not big on responsibility. This is Ronnie, played by Kate O'Mara, who passed away just a couple of years ago. She was a star over here on the show Dynasty. She made her legend here, of course, playing Joe Collins' sister on the show, I guess. But over there, she had a much more varied career. And she only made 2, well, technically 3 appearances on Doctor Who. But one of them is really confusing because it was the 30th anniversary special, and it seemed to involve the Ronnie capturing the Doctor and the entire cast of a soap opera called EastEnders, and doing something with them, but it made no sense, and it was all filmed in 1993 3D vision.
Guys, do yourself a favor. Go look it up, read the Wikipedia entry on it, and walk away. That's the way to save your sanity.
She is pretty sexy, though. I mean...
She is definitely one of the hottest villains.
She's pretty damn hot, yeah, and her TARDIS is pretty awesome inside as well. Doesn't have, the central column is made up of 2 hoops. That if I didn't have this microphone in my hand, I could explain sort of.
Basically, did you ever see Superman, the original Superman?
Yeah, that's
right.
right.
The opposite, that little.
It's similar to that. Here is the Ronnie and the 7th Doctor trying to hide in the throes of bad taste.
Oh,
This is from Time of the Rhine, and this is the first Seventh Doctor story. He still hasn't picked out his outfit, so he's stuck in the Six Doctors, and the Ronnie's disguised herself as Mel in order to try and convince the Doctor to do something that she wants him to do, that she can't do herself, but she doesn't want to know that she's the Ronnie, so she puts on this wig and pretends to be Mel.
In the words of the 11th Doctor, he's still cooking.
Yeah, and he's really confused, and this story is really confusing. In fact, it generally ranks as in most polls, as one of the 10 worst classic stories ever, and there's a reason for that.
Well, he starts by regenerating from concussion.
Yeah, he falls off an exercise like a bicycle and regenerates. I mean, that's
Okay,
it.
now we gotta go into Time Lord pronunciation. What is this guy's name?
Oh my God!
Thank you.
Omega.
This is Omega, not Omega.
This is the Valley Time Lord. Oh my God!
Oh my God! Oh my God! Yeah, this is Omega. This is the Time Lord who gave the Time Lords time travel. He blew up a black hole and provided them with the energy that they needed in order to do time travel, but he got stuck in this alternate universe and slowly went mad from the isolation. So,
Explains that math.
you know, the doctors think it might be a good idea to fix that. They're called upon, the first 3 doctors are called upon to do that. This is from the story of the 3 doctors. He also appears in the story Arc of Infinity. He looks a little different though. This is the classic design. This is the redesign here. A much more ornate, bulbous head.
It looks like they got a bug head on.
Slowly being consumed by your praying mantis.
But thankfully he looks pretty good underneath. Because he does,
Hey,
he does look familiar, doesn't he? Yeah, that's Peter Davison.
I know, this is Daughter Mary's
The Doctor's father, yeah. The Doctor's daughter who has the Doctor's father. Peter Davison, in the story, the 5th Doctor's bio-data extract is taken by Omega basically so they can build him a body that he can survive in our universe for. So he ends up cloning himself, looking like the Doctor. He's not a Doctor, he doesn't count in that other panel he did. He just looks like the Doctor by creating a body that looks like it. This is the Meddling Monk, seen only twice in 2 First Doctor stories, one of which is mostly missing now. But the good news is, he was only in like 1 episode of the one that's missing mostly, and his episode exists, so you can see all of his work on Doctor Who. He was not evil so much as annoying. He just liked to go into Earth history and fiddle around with stuff. He didn't want to give, like, the Vikings nuclear technology. I mean, what could go wrong?
What would happen if I did this?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But he's not malicious about it. He's just curious. He's like a little kid who wonders what you do if you do these things.
Like a hyperactive 5-year-old Time Lord.
This is Morbius.
Chris, man, on this one?
Yeah, I'll follow up.
Okay. Growing up, the brain of Morbius was my favorite episode. Yes, even though we have a Dr. Monster that can borrow from the Wizard of Oz, if I only had a brain. During the Tom Baker era, they had a time they were going for Gothic horror. And they borrowed different aspects from Gothic horror during Tom Baker's era. This is where they went towards Frankenstein's monster. They actually built the body and put a renegade Time Lord's brain in there. They tried to put the Doctor's head on there, but the Doctor got away. So we're going to use a terrarium and put a couple horns on the front.
So you're calling him a pothead? Is that what's going on?
Well, it does look like a bomb.
It looks like somebody had access to a ball. In the course of the story, they refer to him as Chop Suey, the Galactic Emperor, because he's made up of different bits and pieces. As Homer said, this is supposed to be Doctor Who's version of Frankenstein, except what it was supposed to do was have a creature that was made up of multiple different parts create a perfect human to put a brain into. Well, they couldn't afford that somehow, so they just retold Frankenstein from it and did more weird things with it. It does introduce the Sisterhood of Karn, though.
How many people here saw the little mini episode of the 50th anniversary?
Yeah, Night of the Doctor, where we see it.
Do you remember the sisters?
true to call.
This is where they came from.
Yeah, they come from this story. They do keep what's called the Eternal Flame, which is designed to assist Time Lords who are having trouble with regeneration, and thus when the Doctor crashes on that planet, it's very fortunate that they're there to assist him to make the transition from a Doctor into what will become the War Doctor. But yeah, that's a good thing that comes out of the story. Everything else, it's a little iffy. This is Rassilon.
Dickhead.
You just, Rassilon is the great originator of Time Lord Society. He's the one who came up with pretty much everything. There's the rod of Rassilon, the staff of Rassilon, the gun of Rassilon,
The vibrator of
the
Rassilon.
pink bunny slippers of Rassilon. You know, everything is of Rassilon. If you watch, in the Five Doctors, the Doctor says the harp of Rassilon. I didn't even know it was musical. I mean, everything's named after him. Well, this is Rassilon. We hear about Rassilon a few times before the 20th anniversary. We finally see him in the 20th anniversary, and then we never see him again because he's kind of a dick. But if we thought he was a dick, then, well, when he becomes James Bond, then
He becomes the dick of galactic proportion.
and he's got Victor Von Doom's gauntlet over here. It's really causing some problems with him, too. Yeah, this is from the end of time, the last David Tennant story, and, you know, Timothy Dalton played so many bad guys in his career that I have no problem with him picking him for this role. But most people look at him and go, oh, is that James Bond from a couple of movies, or it's the guy from
Prince Barron!
It's Prince Barron from Flash Gordon, you know? And how are you going to
Hold it up from the Rocketeer.
now, that's a bad guy. And so then again, you look at him and think, yeah, I could buy this.
See, I look at him and say, asshole.
Well, yeah.
Okay, he goes to spoil the Rassilon in that.
Yeah, he was, in back there. This is the War Chief. This is one of the more forgotten Time Lords. This is from the last Second Doctor story, the War Games, in which the War Chief and the War Lord, and the War Lord is not a Time Lord, the War Chief is, that's confusing to keep straight in your head. But the War Chief and the War Lord are abducting humans from various eras of military conflict and putting them on a planet to where they can all fight each other, basically, for some entertainment reason. And since he's the one providing them with the technology to scoop people out of Earth's history, he's a renegade Time Lord. I like how they have this panagram set in the background, because these things were used, both these are TARDIS controls, or their versions of TARDIS. They're TARDIS backwards, they're called cigarettes, and they actually stand for something else, but I don't remember what it is right now. But you just move them like that, and things happen. That's how creative they were.
They go back and use some of the stuff they talk about here when they create the Five Doctors, because they have them going through scooping up the Doctor from.
Right. The aspect of the time scoop is sort of predated into this area. And then there's the most famous of all, which is the Master. The Master is Moriarty to the Doctor's homes. That's even more important now that you've got Stephen Moffat running this and Sherlock together. But the Master is like the only Time Lord that we've ever seen who goes through multiple personas on screen, because he was supposed to just be a one-time thing, like a one-season thing, and then they stretch him out, and then the actor who played him died, and so and they got rid of him. They just forgot about it for a while, and then they wanted to bring him back, and so they had to just go over the change like they have for everybody else. So it started with him. This is Roger Delgado.
Roger Delgado, I have to say this is the quintessential Master.
He originated the role.
He originated the role, but his Master was the most sane of the bunch. He was the one that was truly the Moriarty to John Pertwee's Doctor. The others, they have different levels of nothing but. This one, though, was straight, malicious. This Master, typical that he was malicious, and he had
This Master actually has the capacity to realize when he's gone too far, and that he needs the Doctor to get him out of the hole that he's dug himself into, and there are a few occasions where they will team up. You really don't see that often, once or twice with the Alien Master, but you really don't see that until you get to the new series when you see John Sim do it at the end of time. But until then, you don't see that relationship. This is what the master becomes when they bring him back. They say that he has burned his way through all of his regenerations, that he's clinging on to life desperately. He's actually played by two different actors in this guise. In the first story, The Deadly Assassin, he's played by a guy named Jeffrey Beavers. And then in this story, this is from The Keeper of Dragon, which is the next to the last Tom Baker story. He's played by Peter Pratt. Sorry, other way around. Initially played by Peter Pratt, this is Jeffrey Beavers. And Jeffrey Beavers is the husband of Caroline John, who played Liz Shaw in the Third Doctor era. I just throw that in for fun. But emaciated, run down, physically decrepit, he needs a new body. And so he gets one by taking the powers of the Keepership and melding himself with Mrs. Father, whose name is Tremas, that's T-R-E-M-A-S, which is an anagram of M-A-S-T-E-R. Ooh, foreshadowing, yay. Puts them together and gets a new body, and that body looks like this.
What's the rubbish beard? This is not the rubbish beard?
Well, he had a more rubbish beard when he was Tremas. He had a full one that was grayish. Now he's just got, the